Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Hitakiri Singh. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for dropping on in to the Ultimate God of Destruction Longsword build for Monster Hunter Wilds. I did a very similar build to this for Monster Hunter World Iceborne for the Longsword, and let me just tell you what I like to accomplish with my builds. First of all, I'm a damage enthusiast, to put it lightly, but I want to bully monsters. And I want to create builds that have some variability because I don't want it to be completely reliant on skills, because I understand that everybody has varying levels of skill with this weapon, especially when it comes to foresights and ISSs. I am not as proficient as I want to be with the ISS just yet because these monsters are new and they have some timings that I'm just not used to, and it might cause me to vary a build here and there. But I feel like as of right now, where we are before any new armor, that this is the ultimate build you can build for any longsword user. Of course, speedrunners are going to tweak their own builds because they're not making general builds, they're making very case specific builds. But this build is going to be amazing for damage. It's going to have some variability if you want to slot in some comfort if you choose to. But as it stands right now, the build is slotted for huge damage, and that's where I like to make all of my builds. I want to bully monsters. Everything in Monster Hunter as a franchise, all the mechanics on hurting monsters is really based on how much damage you're doing, so damage is always a very important component. But a lot of builds either rely on too much comfort and not enough damage, or so much damage for everything is made for damage and there's zero comfort in there. And as the build stands right now, it's pretty much not very much comfort, but I want to show as we progress through the video that you can build much comfort in this, and you can build different levels of variable skills for a level 3 slot, which is a very important slot that you can add one extra or reinforce another skill that you already have in the build, and it's just going to be amazing. You're going to have amazing damage outputs. You're just going to love this style of play. You can proc damage, additional damage, a lot of different ways. You can stack up your burst, you can do a counter strike, you can do a counter, you can add latent power. But anyways, the flexibility and the huge damage output and the ability to absolutely destroy monsters is why I call this the ultimate God of Destruction build. Now, if you like what you see, my whole squad is always doing stuff like this. Please join us, Zero Fates. I'm going to include in the description a link to our Discord. If you love this game, come join it. Alright, let's start off with the weapon for this build. Of course, you probably want your Ardian level 8s. You can use your gore weapons, they're great. But most of you, by the end game and have this set, you want to go ahead and craft your Ardian. I didn't get the best roll ever. I did, of course, make it with the 3 attacks. I got 2 sharpness, which isn't bad. I don't have to really use a sharpness, master's touch or anything like that. 2 attacks and affinity. The affinity is pretty good because you have a base 5 in your weapon. Now I got base 10. But we're going to get 85% affinity from just the build. So with 10, I have 95% affinity, and I can increase this even further if I wanted to in the build. But what we're finding out is that the higher your raw is, generally, as long as you're getting a good enough boost for it, it's actually superseding the need for quite 100% affinity, and you can even be okay with 85, 90 if you're doing enough raw. But anyways, the weapon is going to be built with 2 criticals. We're going to max out our critical boost, of course, which gives us a 40% damage increase when we do critical hits, which we're trying to do. About 95% of those are going to be applicable. I just put in 2 level 3s. Again, I hate wasting a level 2 slot, and I have plenty of decos. Now, I have also built this with attack 5 like this, and crit boost 3. And it is very similar in numbers. However, I think the crit boost 3 is still outperforming it just slightly. However, I think once we get weapons that have significantly higher base than what we do, like I have a 222 attack raw base. Once we start getting some, event weapons or DLC, or not DLC, but like art tempered or things like that, I think once that attack is popping off about 300-ish naturally, and then you have your buffs and your skills and your demon powder and might seed and all that good stuff. I think it might be outperformed to have attack boost 5 because of the 4% flat increase. This is not like attack boost in previous renditions of Monster Hunter. It's not just flat increases. You have a percentage. And in this game, in this franchise, if you see percentage of attack increased, you say, yes, that's what I want on my build over specific numbers. And this one gives you 2. This one gives you +4 and +9 on top of that. So on my 222, I get a 4% increase. Again, that's not so notable, but once that attack is like 300, 4% of that is now 12 raw, where it's about 8.5 raw right now. So the larger your base attack goes, the more important the skill I feel is going to be. But anyways, and then I have this other paralysis weapon that I just happened to get a nice roll on. No sharpness, but 1 affinity and the rest attack, so it's powerful. I use my master's touch on this one, and I'm only still able to get 3 levels of crit boost, but only 1 level of handicraft with this critical status. This is basically a swap-off weapon, so I can get 1 paralysis because I don't have the sharpness on this, you know. And it's been working kind of nicely, you know. Often I don't even switch because I'm just going for the kill so fast. All right, your armor, you're going to have 4 pieces of gore. A lot of people are building their 4 gore sets with Ray Dow or other parts. I just find this to be the most optimal for my playstyle, and I think the majority base of the Longsworders playstyle, because we're not all speedrunners and we're not all flawless, and a lot of people struggle with their foresight slashes and their IA slashes and things like that. My foresight I have down, my EIs I'm a little off with because I don't know quite the timing. Monsters like Uthduna and their delays and their flops, or sometimes the attacks happen much faster, so I will get that down and I might change up this build a little bit. But the beauty of this build is it can be very, very flexible. Okay, anyways, here's your pieces. You're gonna have a built-in Koa and evade window in your helmet. The Koa is nice. It just is kind of an addition. You could use some other pieces, but I like that addition in there because the Coalescence is going to proc with other skills, so its uptime is pretty much most of the fight as well. The most important things about this piece is the level 3 slot and the level 1 slot. It's going to be very important to get your quick sheet with it, so we'll talk about that in a second. The chest, I use the Arc Vulcan for the weakness exploit, so I don't have to use a 3-slot decoration on that. And it comes with a 3-slot and it comes with a 2-slot, so the way I see it is a build or a piece with 2 3-slots and a 2-slot, and the weakness exploit is something I definitely need, so this is really, really good. You have your arms, evade window, constitution. The constitution helps reduce your fixed stamina depletion for your maximum might to be working, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's the 2 level 2 slots that you really need in this, with a gore piece to get a 4-piece gore. Excuse me. The waist, I use the alpha. A lot of people use the beta because they want that level 2 slot, but I find with the alpha, I'm going to get this 1 level of antivirus in a level 1 slot, and this 1 level of antivirus on the greaves, and these greaves might be the best greaves in the game for any build, with flinch free, and I got a level 3 and 2 level 2 slots, and here I have a level 3 and a level 1 slot. The reason that's important is because how I want to build quick sheath and antivirus, and it can be difficult to build this both with any other rendition basically of a 4-piece gore with some other piece, whether it's Ray legs or Ray chest or Ray head, or I was using Odegaron, the Guardian Odegaron for the 2 pieces of burst, but this build I get the most slottage, and I'm going to get some viability, or what's the word I'm looking for? Variability. If I don't want to quite build it like this, I can easily switch out some things. So anyways, the greaves you always want to build like this. A tenderizer, the waist, you always want to put your other tenderizer. Now you got your max weakness exploit. You want to put 2 sheath jewels here and 1 sane jewel here. Now you have your antivirus maxed out. I'll talk about that skill in just a second. You're going to put 2 maximum might jewels in your arm, the 3rd one in the chest, so now your maximum might is maxed out. This deco I always use for a chain deco. Burst is the best damage inducing single skill in the game. Every single build shall have 1 level of burst, and now this is where the other level 1 deco becomes important. Now I can get my quick sheath 3, and this is where we can be a little variable, well, in a couple places. This here specifically, because if you don't play a style where you're reliant on quick sheath 3, it is a huge damage boost for longsword players if you know how to use it and get into your ISS. But if you're not utilizing that style, you can use these quick sheet slots for Divine Blessing 3, for Recovery Up, to increase healing of your potions. If you're against a fire monster, you can do fire resist, poison resist. So you can build tanky with this build as well. So it's not just a pure glass cannon build. It has a little bit of variability, okay? And then this counter attack jewel. This is what I specifically slot here, because Adrenaline Rush gives you a plus 10 raw every time you evade an attack. And for the Longsword, that's my Foresight Slash. A lot of speedrunners don't like to use this one. They like to use the other counter one, this one instead. Counter Strike, mainly because Adrenaline Rush, when you do a Foresight, you eat up some stamina, so you lose maximum might for just an instant, but it's very, very fast to get back. So if you're speedrunning and you're looking to make sure every hit crits, yeah, I can understand that, but for most everybody else, I think Adrenaline Rush is going to be a little bit better. But if you're really proficient with your ISS, your ER Spirit Slash, then you can always use this. It's the same plus 10 increase. It's just either or. But two other skills I want you to consider in this spot. One of them is something that a lot of people aren't realizing with your 4-piece gore set, and that's Latent Power. Latent Power procs with the health depletion of your gore set. So this gets procced early and often, and whether you're having a 3-minute fight, a 6-minute fight, or a 30-minute fight, this stays procced consistently throughout the fight for the majority of the fight, meaning you have that additional 10% affinity on top of whatever you have. This might really come into play when I get a better roll and I get all attack and 1 sharpness, so I have 5% less affinity in my weapon. I might consider putting this in there. Or if I'm at 95 affinity right now. If you have to be at 100, consider this as well. And the last skill that's a little variable that I really want you to suggest, and it's kind of how I've been using this build, is doing level 2 burst. Level 2 burst, basically, you get a certain amount of raw increase from the first time you hit a monster when you have burst equipped. I believe it's the first hit is like a plus 2 raw increase. And then when you do 5 successive hits, and it doesn't have to be like a super quick combo, it can, of course, but as long as you hit them 5 consecutive times without getting hit, the 5th hit procs a plus 5 attack boost for your raw, so about plus 7 for just this one level of skill. That is awesome, guys. That's awesome, and that's just procced constantly throughout the fight. At level 2, you increase all of that by 4. And it's the biggest increase of the burst skill from level 1 to level 2 with a 4 increase. Level 2 to level 3 increases an additional 2. Level 3 to 4 increases an additional 2 from 3 to 4, and 4 to 5 is a 2. So from level 1 to level 2 is actually a noticeable and significant increase. I like it like this. Sometimes, actually, what I'm running right now is definitely with the Counter Strike, but sometimes I have this lazy mode where I don't really want to fight too much. I just want to live, and I'm tired, and I don't want to think too much about setting up counters. I just want to smash a monster's face in, and that's when I use this. This is why this is called the Ultimate God of Destruction builds. My builds are tailored to dominance, to bullying, not necessarily the fastest time, but it's always going to include the elements of the speedrunners to get their high damage and their fast times, and I try to get as much of that in there while providing some variability and flexibility to create comfier builds if you want to. And I think this is the perfect build for the Longsword for that. You're going to have like 97% of damage output of any other build that you can put together, with the exception of some of those like fancy speedrun builds that have like Ambush 3, because these guys are just killing these monsters like within 2 to 3 minutes. So Ambush 3 is amazing in those situations. But for all the rest of us, I think this mixture of skill is going to be exactly what you want to do to have some really satisfying fights with damage numbers. And just like every other Monster Hunter, the reason people always talk about damage is all the monster mechanics are based on damage. Wounds being opened up after taking a certain amount of hits and damage. Parts breaking after taking certain amounts of damage. Certain part breaks causing flinches. Certain part breaks causing knockdowns. All this is based on damage, so it is important to have a high damage output in your endgame set, but that does not mean you have to leave out any kind of comfort, like I was trying to show here. All right, let's go into the lab and show some numbers. couple things I didn't go into too much details, and before we go into the training room, I want to talk about is kind of how some of these skills work with this black skill. This infects you with frenzy when you're against a large monster. So the way this works is when you approach the monster, first see the monster, you're going to be infected with this thing called frenzy, which depletes your health and stamina, and seems like a bad thing, but you cure it with your skill called antivirus. Once infected, makes it easier to overcome the frenzy and increases affinity when it's cured. And you cure it by just doing damage to the monster. After you do a certain amount of damage, and it's not a whole lot, it gets cured. And at level 3, it says 15, but it's a mistranslation. In the Japanese version, it does say affinity plus 10. For some reason, this game says plus 15, but it's a plus 10 increase in your affinity. That's how many critical hits you're going to be doing. And then there is a base plus 15 increase with the frenzy on the set, so you're getting plus 25. I'll show that here in the lab. And because that is like an affliction that you give yourself, your coalescence in your helmet stays procced much of the fight, and it's an increase in damage. It's mostly based on elemental and status, but it's noticeable because it procs pretty much consistently in the fight. So I had some other things, like you could put agitator up here, things like that, that increase as well, but the agitator pieces don't have the slots that I wanted to be able to build my antivirus 3 and my quick sheet 3 and get my counter strike or those kind of skills in there, but the coalescence makes that all happen, and it adds a little bit of a damage increase as well. Not as much as agitator, but something very nice that just constantly proccing, and yeah, that's all I really wanted to mention about that. So just to show this in action, my base affinity with my weapon is 10, correct? So when my stamina is full, maximum might is plus 30. You'll see that noted here. My base affinity is now 40. Now, if I do something to deplete my stamina, this is one of the 2 main attacks I have that does. The other is the Foresight Slash, like we were talking about. Stamina depleted, affinity back down to 10, and as soon as the bar is full again, it's back up to plus 40. It's barely not active, especially with the longsword, because our attacks don't use stamina. Other weapons it's a little different, but other weapons that also don't use a lot of stamina, this is why maximum might is meta in just about every other build. Okay, so we want antivirus to proc. That's gonna, I'm in frenzy right now. I'm all purple, so you just do damage. You'll see the coalescence proc on the right side of the screen, and you'll see what happens to the number once antivirus is procced and once my frenzy is cured. Alright, you'll see now here on the right, coalescence is going to proc, and that happens when your antivirus clears up your frenzy. So now I have 65 base affinity plus the additional 30% from my weakness exploit on weak points. So on weak points, I'm doing 95% affinity. These are what some of the damage numbers are going to look like. On my R2 triangles, I'm getting about 350. Helmbreakers, I can get like 90, 95, depending on the monster and the situation, maybe in the 100. Actually, the highest one I've seen is like 115. I couldn't tell you exactly what the conditions were. It's just super high damaging, and this is me in a nutshell. I want to do as much as damage as humanly possible, and I'm going to build my build that way, but I want to build it in a way where I can build a little bit of flexibility into it just in case I need to. The other thing I want to talk about is your affinity on your frenzy does kind of run out after a little while, and you will reproc it, let's say if the monster runs off into another area, but you can also use your corrupt mantle to reproc it. It's the best mantle in the game. You get additional tick damage. Like every damage hit I was doing is now increasing another large damage number because of the mantle. It's got the frenzy properties. It increases your affinity another 10. I don't even know the exact number because I'm going to show you here, and it's going to show 95% affinity, and I don't quite know how it's getting all that affinity, but it's part of it's due to the mantle. But the other thing is it reprocs antivirus, and then if the monster does go to another area, then you could reproc it again. So this is how you pretty much consistently keep it on that 95% affinity, and this is why this build does so much damage. Let's wrap up this video with a quick outro. I hope you guys enjoyed it.